Okay, this is a continuation of the previous example where we created a jumper block or a jump node, whatever you want to call it, where it didn't draw a line between two blocks. We typically use it the most when doing menu structures, and in that case it's important to learn also how the tutorial can return to that menu without continuing with the flow. So let's get started and see how that is done. Our example here is step 12, which I can name as the menu. Now what we want to do is to have, when you tap a button here, it will jump to the flow here on the right side. And I only want this to show the first two steps and then come back to the menu. This would be, for example, in a case where you have learned something earlier and you need to come back and remind the player of something and you don't want them to continue with the flow, so it needs to break and then continue back to the menu. So first of all, we will need a new variable for this. I will call it return value, and name it. We use this to determine return value to get back to the menu. We don't have to give it any default value. It can be a string or a number. I'm going to use a number in this case since I've gotten used to using numbers with this. So I will save the return value variable. Okay, now there's a few steps to do. Let's remove this block first, since we want to do a completely new example. There are also a few ways of doing this. As said, you can hide all the logic that I'm gonna do inside a button, but for clarity's sake, I tend to use extra logic blocks just to make the flow clearer to read. So what we want to do is let's create a logic block first, which is called go to step 13. Now we'll connect it in this step. So there are two buttons, and what I want to do is to have this button to go to the step 13. Let's start editing the logic in it. We need to do two things in this button. First of all, we will set the variable. We created the return value and we're gonna set it as 1 in this case. And we're gonna come back to it, why it's important to create this return value variable. Then we will go to block, which is called go to step 13, which is the logic block. You could use one logic block. For example, if you have 5 buttons, you have one logic block that controls everything. But again, the more you have, the easier it will be to read in the end. So let's stay in editor, save and close. There we go. Next step is to go here. Let's edit the step 13, and we want it to jump here. And we'll do the same thing as previously. Set variable jump node as step 13, and then go to block, change it to a variable, and then go to jump node variable, which is step 13. Now when you click the button, it will go here and this will jump to step 13. Now the next thing is to create that logic where the tutorial decides whether it continues to the flow with the flow or not. Let's start by editing this. Let's rename this logic continue. Let's say this return to menu question mark. Now we will need to add a new condition, and if return value equals 1. Remember, we set it as 1 with the button. Then this will go to do something else. It will go to block. Let's see what this was called. Was it 16? There. Now, if the return value is 0, which it is by default, it will go from here and continue with the flow. But if you come through the menu here and the return value is 1, it will actually go to another place. And we'll call this go to back to menu. And now we will just go to block, go to block, back to menu, and now we will just do set variable return value as 0, set variable jump node as menu, and then go to block and change this to variable. Once again, go to jump node. Now, if the return value is 1, it will go to this logic block, and in this logic block it resets the return value so it doesn't cause issues later. It sets the variable jump node as menu. Since we saved it as a block when we create it in globals, we can do that. And then we will go to a variable called jump node. So let's see if this works. We should get text 13, 15 and then return the menu. 13, 15 and return to menu. And that is how you can create very easily a menu structure as well, and with using buttons and jump nodes. And of course, if you do another button, for example, for this, you do it in a separate set variable return value, maybe 2 this time, just in case, and go to block, step 19. And then in this block, go to step 15, for example. Now this you could aim to go here, and if then the return value is 2, which we set here, it will skip this and continue with the flow. And then you could add, for example, a logic button here to check whether the return value is 2. If it is, then break up and go back to menu. And that is a very easy way to do a menu structure without using any flow arrows. And of course, that is a repetition of the last lesson, which was how to create a relation between 2 blocks and there is no flow arrow drawn.